A diverse group of people here and a powerful discussion. So I'll just let everybody introduce themselves and we'll get started.
All right, I guess I'll go first. Good morning, almost afternoon, everybody. I'm Jason Baptiste, CEO of Onswipe. Who here owns an iPad? Okay, well. So out of all you guys, we reach more than 1 in 3 of you as the largest HTML5 platform on the iPad. What does that mean? We let both brands and publishers make their content a beautiful magazine app-like experience inside of the browser for their existing audience. We're about 2 years old over in Union Square.
Hi, good morning. I'm Alexis Rask. I'm the GM of partnerships at Shopkick. We're a mobile shopping application on both iPhone and Android and iPads. And we actually connect some of the world's largest brand manufacturers and retailers with consumers as they're shopping. We work with almost everyone that Heather has connected with in her former life. And from a consumer perspective, we create a lot of value while shoppers are on the go using mobile as a tool that makes in-store engagement better and more interesting.
Hi, I'm Seth Rogin, Vice President of Advertising at the New York Times. I oversee our mobile and tablet division as well as magazines and a number of cross-category digital and print sales teams. I want to point out that while we're all honored to be invited here today, they clearly don't think we're that wise because there's a screen here telling us all our own names. So it's fantastic. Thank you for having faith in all of us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tracey Weber. I run global digital for Citibank, which includes internet, mobile, and tablet for our Citi customers who come to either shop for product or log in and transact on their bank business, pay their bills, check their statements, etc. Prior to Citi, I actually was at Travelocity for many years and did a startup before that called Site 59. So I've been in the e-commerce space for a while, but banking was definitely a new experience, and it's a very interesting category for the digital space, particularly for tablets, which is why I'm excited about today's topic.
My name is Randy White. I oversee all of our media products and services at CareerBuilder. Most of you probably know CareerBuilder as an online employment marketplace, which is probably what we'll be talking mostly today about. I should say I will be talking mostly about. But we also are heavily involved in helping our customers from an employment data perspective. We are a recruitment advertising agency for many of our clients, helping with their brand, their career sites. We are a search firm for high-level, hard-to-find positions. So we're well beyond the job board, but as it pertains to the tablet and mobile, I'll be talking about CareerBuilder.com.
Great. So I gotta love the name of this panel, and I have to repeat it, though it's not a phone after all. But why are tablets so important? So I'm primarily a researcher, so I'm going to throw out some research facts. 1 in 3 people are accessing a tablet in the U.S. in the past month, and that's 100 million people in the U.S. So tablets are obviously, not only are they heavily used, it's growing. In the next 3 years, nearly half of the U.S. population will have a tablet to access. So it's a really important space. And as Steve was pointing out, there's a lot of research and consumer research out there that's showing that it's a completely different consumer experience. It's used in different occasions and harnessed in different ways. So I wanted to hand it over to the panel. Let's talk about how your company has dug up any unique learnings as it pertains to tablet versus smartphone, TV, web, and how have you harnessed that for your brand?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. One other interesting stat and the importance of tablet is it's grown in its first 3 years, the iPad, quicker than both the iPhone and the iPod combined in their 3 years by double. So just outpacing anything else we've ever seen. And the biggest learning we've seen in terms of usage is it's not a computer, it's not a phone in terms of usage times. It's completely flipped on its head. It's in the morning when you wake up, similar to watching a TV with breakfast, checking in on news. And it's also used heavily at night. You see traffic start to spike around 9 o'clock to midnight, used very, very heavily at night, just like a TV. So we look at the tablet as the TV of this generation, your device for daily habits.
So at Shopkick, we're a mobile-first company. We don't actually have a real web presence, and we started out building exclusively for smartphone devices because what we were doing was connecting consumers with their shopping experiences in store. So our app has been out in market for just shy of 2.5 years. For the first 2 years, there was no tablet experience because what you did with Shopkick was actually earn points and find product information and understand the store merchandising when you were visiting a Target, a Macy's, a Best Buy, or looking for all of the products for your grocery shopping. And then we're very obsessed with our analytics internally, and over time we started to see this consistent trend where users were opening up the app, but we could see by our location logs that they were not inside of a store, they were not in a parking lot of a store, they were somewhere else. And we thought, well, where else would you be opening up a shopping app that only works in store if not in store? And the answer was, they're trying to browse. They're trying to pre-trip plan. And we are not a complete end-to-end shopping experience unless we allow you to pre-trip browse and plan and see all the stores nearby you and learn about all the products inside of the stores and actually start to get ready for your shopping trip. And so that was the precursor to some developments that we made both for the smartphone version of the app as well as a release onto iPad.
So this morning, actually, I was at another event where I had the pleasure of introducing Brian Stelter, who is our lead reporter on the Media Decoder blog, and you may have seen him on TV a lot lately, as he has a book out about what's changing in morning TV, and particularly covering the Today Show. And one of the points that Brian made was actually that one of the biggest challenges that all of morning TV is facing is that it had a function in the morning that you would wake up and the first thing you did was turn on morning TV because it was a comfort. It told you that North Korea didn't hurl a bomb at us overnight and the stock market didn't fall apart and everything's going to be okay. You can get started on your day. And now, he said, we turn to tablets. We turn to mobile devices, but tablets in particular. It's the first thing we do. And so when you ask about learnings that we've had at the Times, we see app usage go up very high, to echo a little bit of what Jason was saying. App usage goes up in a huge spike first thing in the morning. People want that contained experience. It's a part of the way they learn about the world. However, in the evening, it's Safari use. Right? So the app is in the morning, it's very contained, it's one experience, maybe people are downloading it and having it for their commute, but in the evening people are having that lean back that we talked about, right? They're having that experience of surfing a little bit, they're exploring, they're enjoying a little bit more of the content, they're getting beyond the headlines, and there's that moment that really, if you think about it, having been a newspaper company for years, that we suddenly have this new engagement that's very exciting because it's that intimate experience of the device at the end of your hand.
So at Citi and Financial Services, we were not first to market with a tablet application. We actually were third. And it was interesting because the first two that went basically just took their mobile apps and 2x'd them appropriately and put them out there. And I think that was the way people initially thought about tablet. It was just a really big phone. And the reality is, as these guys have all said, it's not being used that way at all. It's a much more immersive experience. And it's immersive for two reasons. One, because of the touch aspect, which I think naturally makes it more immersive, and the high resolution, the way it can present content and information to you in a way that is just so much more fun and interactive and elegant than either on your desktop, laptop, or on your phone. So when we did our iPad app at Citi, we actually created an entirely different experience that leveraged graphics. So most of you log into your bank accounts and you see a traditional ledger of credits and debits. Well, how boring is that? How unexciting is that in this form factor? So instead, we presented you with graphics that show that so that you can press on the buttons on the scatter plot and see, oh yeah, that was the payment I made to my credit card bill, or this was my direct deposit of my paycheck. And it becomes an immersive and interactive experience. We also put a lot more content there than we do in any of our other channels. You know, on the web, our customers come, and in fact, we measure our success on time on site being as low as possible, right? Because you want to log in, you want to pay as many bills as you can, you want to get out, you want to be done. You don't want to hang around and browse, right? Whereas many other sites want you to hang around and browse. But on the tablet, we decided, wow, this is probably the opportunity. You are leaning back either in the morning or probably at night, and maybe you would read an article about how to plan for your first mortgage or what's the latest and greatest in investment tips, et cetera. So we used it as an opportunity to get that content out there in front of them. And it's been very well received. by our customers and in the industry as being a smart use of the form factor and the tablet experience. And the one thing I'd add as it relates to customer behavior, we just launched the exact same application in Russia and Hong Kong for our customers there. And we're seeing that what customers want and need and how they immerse with these devices is not different. Obviously, the language is different, but that's the only thing that's different. I think that's pretty profound for the globalization trends that we're seeing and which will affect all of our business and be huge opportunities for everyone.
So the previous panel, someone mentioned let behavior drive your strategy, and so we clearly, like everyone here, have embraced that. We look at usage. Most people traditionally have used Career Builder Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday between 10 a.m. 2 p.m. Right? They get back to work. They had a one-on-one with their boss, and they, hopefully go to Career Builder and start researching new jobs. And it's funny, but I mean that is the reality. I mean, we see huge spikes in traffic Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in midday, and then as mobile, specifically smartphone, came along, we started watching different trends. So we kind of extend the day, and we see spikes in the morning and the early evening during commute times. And now with the advent of the tablet, we're watching, like everyone here, times in the evening hours where they are relaxing and really more in research and browse mode. And so we've designed our tablet experience, and I know we're going to get to this a little bit later. We really focus mainly on the tablet browser to be much more research discoverable in nature. And the other reason for that is I don't have my resume stored in a file on my tablet. And so if you think about the usage of how someone would actually take action on as it pertains to our site and our audience, we drive leads for our clients, right? Employers pay us to drive applications or leads, and if we can't get the lead that they want, then why focus on that? And there's Dropbox, and we're working on a number of different things, but it still is all about the resume. And so we really focus more on that discoverable nature and really focus on helping a job seeker understand what a company is all about, whether it's video, whether it's in-depth research I can do about that company, get reviews via Glassdoor on that company. And so it's just a very different approach to the way we've looked at tablet versus the rest of our sites.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some common themes here. There's that one theme about day parting and creating different content experience based on what people are accessing at different times of the day, and I think that's really compelling. The other thing that came up was the way that people are using the different devices at different times. So is it, it's more discovery-based for tablet, which is, kind of an interesting way to change the way that you're pushing content to people based on that. So now when we get into the tablet, there's definitely a huge debate going on about whether we should be focusing efforts on developing apps or really refining the browsing experience and making sure it's customized to the tablet. And I think everyone kind of has strong opinions about that, so I definitely would want to get into that. Jason, why don't you talk about Onswipe and how you fit in there?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole premise of our company, right? And it's a very simple statement we often make is that we think apps are bullshit when it comes to content. And think about it. When you read any piece of content, you read it, you find it through search, you find it through share. Maybe it's a site that you love, you go to nytimes.com directly. Or let's say you're on Twitter and you're actually using the Twitter app and you hit on a link that you saw from your friend or somebody you trust. That still opens the web browser. Your entire audience is on the web browser. If your audience is there, that's where scale is, that's where measurement is, that's where people are, brands are going to buy advertising, that's where brands are going to want to tell their message. So we go to publishers and say, your audience is here and a huge part is shifting to tablet. Why not make that a better app-like experience with your existing audience and lean back? So we take the best of what an app can do from an experience and lean back and design side, but marry it to the scale and distribution that you've built up for decades as a media brand.
And I wouldn't dispute that as it relates to content, but obviously the things that people are doing on either their smartphones or their tablets are not just content consumption. So whoever is in the audience who is a publisher, of news or some sort of content or an advertiser who buys against that, I actually think that logic stands, but we sort of all know that the mobile tools that we use, tablet and phone, are also life tools. So there are certain applications for apps where you're trying to navigate from point A to point B, or you're trying to conduct your banking, or you're trying to shop. And so there are places where an app and some functionality in the experience that's not so much just about browsing, but is actually about doing or transacting or sort of moving things from point A to point B, it becomes a little bit harder to think about doing some of that without an app experience. And so that's our point of view there.
I'm sorry, Jason, apps are what?
Apps are bullshit.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good. Let's
Capital B.
Let's get started.
Headline of the article.
So keep in mind, for the New York Times, we have about 40 million uniques in the digital landscape. About 18 million are both mobile and tablet combined. But 10 million, 1 out of every 4 New York Times digital readers, are accessing us only on a mobile or a tablet device. And a very large portion of them are coming just through our apps. If you think of the iPhone app, if you think of our iPad app. And I understand what you're saying in terms of the limitations, but I think what you're really saying is that some apps design are BS as opposed to apps incomplete, and here's why. Okay. There is value in a contained news experience, right? And so I'm not pushing funny videos of kitties out, right? Yep. People are coming to the New York Times because they need to know what's happening in the world, and that credibility is conveyed to the advertiser, to the brand that wants to tell their story in the app. And yes, Safari is a huge part of what we do, and the audience is larger. But at the same time, we don't make a judgment between the different platforms. What we say is wherever the reader wants to be, that's where the New York Times is going to be, because the behavior is going to drive what we do, not necessarily just the creative tools.
And I think like the one thing to keep in mind with all that is it's the New York Times. It's one of the most well-known and trusted brands in publishing and news for the world. I mean, the paper of record for the world. Okay. There's probably no more brands that I can count on my fingers that have that level of trust, and that's where they're going to get people who want that app on their home screen. After that, it's fatigue for everybody else. So that's the one other way to think about it.
Yeah, and I think I have to say I can't imagine a day when I don't use my my New York Times iPad app. But I will say the one piece that I think is very relevant is that we do need to start designing our browser-based experiences for tablets, for touch, and for that type of experience. And that, I mean, I don't know how many sites I go to a day where it is not fat finger friendly at all, and I cannot get the link, and I think I got it, and then I got to go back and do it again. And I even see sites today, and it shocks me, that are brand new, just launched a month ago, and missed the boat on that obvious thing. So that piece of what we've been talking about, I completely agree, and we're thinking about that a lot at Citi. And increasingly, right touch is going to be everywhere. So we'll have keyboards, of course, because we've seen that. Even because Steve Jobs said no keyboards, all of us have one for our iPad. So we'll still have those, but touch for the navigation and the interaction with the material on the page is going to be in every device that we use, including our TVs, frankly, right, over time. So I think we've got to start moving in that direction. On the kind of apps versus browsers, I think it's early to tell, and it probably will be different by category and by brand. I think for us, what we still see more than half of our users, when they're using their tablet to come do their banking, they use the browser. It's just natural. Our site looks okay. It's not fat finger friendly yet at all. So, but it works, and it's okay, and everything's there. And I think that's been the other difference for many companies like us that have, we have literally hundreds of things that you can do in our website experience. We've got the obvious ones that you all probably do, but then we've got a bunch of others like report a lost stolen card or dispute a charge, those types of things. And we can't replicate every single one of those in our app environment. So we haven't. So that also drives you back to the browser. So I think ultimately all of this converges, and HTML5 is going to help make it so, if you want a glorified bookmark that's looks like an app and is on your dashboard, that's great. And if you want to go straight to the browser, that's great too. But ultimately for us, from a technical perspective and an experience perspective, it's all converged.
I think companies, publishers, whoever needs, to have a presence on tablet, as they're thinking through it, at least for us, it was simply where are people spending their time, right? That'll drive where you're going to invest. If I'm banking a few times a week, I'm going to probably get the app as long as it's nice and beautiful and elegant, I'm going to probably use that primarily. It's a contained environment, but I'm going there day after day, week after week. In our experience, people would register with CareerBuilder. They would use it heavily, and after a few days or a few weeks, they would drop off. And either they got a job, or they aren't pissed off at their boss anymore, or they used it because it gave them kind of an initial research and view into the types of jobs and the location they were looking for, but then they went deep into and maybe used their networks and they got their job some other way, but they started with us. And so for us, I'm not going to download a CareerBuilder iPad app because I'm probably not going to need it in a few weeks, and it takes up space on my tablet. So we've invested heavily on the browser side, and I think that's just kind of what each organization's strategy is going to be different. Now, on the flip side, we have another constituency, and that's our customers, our employer base. And they have an app where they can go in, and they have a number of different apps because they're in there every day. They are posting jobs every day. They are searching through resumes every day. And we've built that app to be very tablet friendly, and I can flip through resumes, the 162 resumes that fit the criteria that I'm looking for, let's say software engineers in Wichita, Kansas. I can flip through those resumes in a nice, elegant way on my tablet app. Likewise, if I'm looking for data statistics on where are those software engineers throughout the world, the returns that I'm getting of that data are in a nice, elegant app as well. So I think it's but I'm using that every day. So I mean, to us, that was kind of the main decision point as to why we would go app or browser.
Great. So I wanted to spend some time talking about advertising. So for those that are on the media side, maybe talk a little bit about how you're creating discrete ad packages for tablet, or how it would be different from desktop, mobile, or TV, or even bundling them together, but to interact with people in different ways. And then those on the marketing side, how are you approaching your advertising strategy in that way?
Yeah, so one thing kind of was touched on a lot, especially with Citi, is that it's about touch, right? And fundamentally, if you did a psychological study, the interface, the tablet, it's a 1-foot interface, just like a magazine. It's 1 foot away from you, and that's how you design. Whereas the computer is a 3-foot interface, completely different interaction paradigm. And because of that, you should think of it as a different device, and especially on the advertising side. So we said, hey, make your content look beautiful, more magazine-like, more touch-friendly. What does that enable from an advertising side? And we never charge publishers. We're not a software platform. We're not SaaS. We said what's more interesting is to be a media platform, to let advertising tell beautiful, awesome stories. Think the Just Do It's, the Got Milks, the Think Difference. There are so many brand dollars. Neil Mohan at Google will talk to you about this all day, all the brand dollars that want to go online. We think that the tablet is finally going to open that floodgate to let brands tell beautiful stories, the ones that would be told in Super Bowl commercials or print ads, the things that people would love and rip out and put on the wall. So when you think about the tablet, think of it as a branding opportunity, something different than the mobile phone, something lean back, something full screen, something content and educational as well.
So the way we work with partners at Shopkick is we have a sort of no banners, no impressions, no click-through rate policy. We start with what is the context that the user is in and what is their intent. And so if you have a brand who wants to build awareness or engagement, we have to find you our users wherein they're in the context or their intent is to browse and consume beautiful content. If you're a CPG company and you're trying to facilitate the sale of a product inside of a grocery store, then we actually need to not show you content, we need to show you the product information and drive you to scan a UPC code and do something very different. So our whole business model is built around, we have consumer engagement directly through the full path to purchase when they're out of store, pre-trip planning and browsing and willing to consume all sorts of content in the form of product information, recipes, tips, videos, etc. And we can address programs in that manner. And then we also have people when they're more in action mode. So from a tablet versus phone perspective, you can imagine that a lot of the in-store happens from a planning and media perspective around the phone device, and a lot of the browsing happens more in the tablet. And then we essentially let the user toggle back and forth between the two, so that we don't tell them, you can only do this on the iPad or you can only do this on the phone. We actually tell you you can do both of these things anywhere. We just expect our data logs to show us that you're doing more of one on one device and more of the other on the other where it's logical.
So I think we can all agree that tablet drives a lot of engagement, right? That's why we're up here. And so that piece of it, let's stipulate that. And I think what we do at the Times is really market the connection to the credibility of the Times, right? That's when what we do better than anyone, I believe, is tell stories. And so we start from that. We start with the brands, because my job, of course, is to connect the brand with the reader, with the user. So we start by listening really to what those goals are. And then what we've done actually, and just rolled out recently, is roll out 4 very specific segmentation studies in terms of understanding the motivation of the brands and match those up with the motivation of the readers. And we help brands to strategize with us. And what we do, we've created something in-house at the Times called the Idea Lab, but I know many brands now have labs, that actually lets us use some of the storytelling techniques that are used by the newsroom. And once they've been used by the newsroom, and of course they're created completely separately there, but once those techniques have been used, we actually bring them to life often in a tablet interactive unit. And you may have read about this. This was a big story in Adweek this week as well. And so that's been an exciting piece, is how do we help them to develop custom programs? When we do those segmentations, we're able to dive a lot deeper into understanding what the real end goal is, right? Is it really that they're looking to just have engagement or interaction, or I call it EDIT, right? So it's engagement, download, interaction, or transaction. Which thing of the edit spectrum is it that you're looking for? And for us, one of the really powerful things has been driving downloads. How do we help brands say, I'm going to start an app, but I don't want to be lost in the 6 million apps that are already out there? New York Times, you've already done the work of building gigantic scale. Can I piggyback with you? Can I be connected both with the credibility and the audience? One of the amazing executions that most amazing executions I've ever seen, and by the way, I had very little to do with it, but someone in the room did, was that Ralph Lauren a year or two ago actually live streamed their fashion show onto the tablet app, into their ad in the New York Times app. They could have very well live streamed it into their own, but there was something about that connection between these two brands, and that's what we helped them create.
Yeah, and I think our experience at Citi definitely backs up what the other panelists have said. On most of our digital properties, we do have Citi advertising. We don't do third-party advertising, but we do Citi advertising. So to sell you that new card, or to get you to take a new product, or do balance transfer, those types of things. But when we did the tablet app, we chose not to put any of that standard. There's no banner spots. There's no ad spots at all. But we did integrate in content. So it's much more of a subtle sell, and it's trying to take advantage of the engagement. So rather than just use the space to throw a banner up there that says, hey, you should get a balance transfer, but there in the content there is an article about how to think about carrying a balance, and if you need a loan on your card and why you might want to do that. And so more of a subtle sell that takes advantage of the engagement. On the flip side, we are an advertiser that advertises in tablet apps, and again, for us, it's a huge opportunity to get customers who are higher in the funnel, right? So you think about a lot of what you see in Citi advertising, you've got kind of our TV ads, right? So very brand, very aspirational. Then you've got our direct response, hey, just get this card, 20,000 miles, get the American Advantage card. And it's hard to find good places for the stuff in between for the brand consideration. And in our space, it's a complicated purchase. It's not a simple purchase, it's a complicated purchase. So we've actually looked for many of these tablet apps have given us a great environment to have more of that mid-funnel advertising, get not quite totally just about brand and nothing about product, but not quite click here and get 20,000 miles, somewhere nicely in between.
So one of the great things about Career Builder is on our site, all of the content is actually paid for advertising. So we're really talking about the kind of display advertising around the paid for content advertising. But it's a very different experience on the desktop. People are taking action. On our desktop, it might be 65% of our overall traffic, but probably 90 to 95% of the actual actions in terms of leads and applications. And so The display advertising that's at least recruitment focused follows that, right? So the display advertising is it's interactive, it's dynamic, it's targeted, and the creative is targeted based on who I am and what I'm looking for, mainly because I can take action and apply for a job. On the tablet, again, because actions are so low and it's much more about discovery, the advertising, the creative reflects that, right? So it's not action-oriented, it's brand, it's not DR. And so the brand, so the experience is very different. The other thing that wasn't touched on is if I do click, we really try to help our customers understand what that experience is going to be like wherever we're taking our audience, right? So if they go into some awful landing page that isn't tablet optimized in this case, I mean, it's really much more about the smartphone, and that's where you see some awful stuff where that landing page is where you're taking your customer. But even in the tablet, we're really trying to counsel our advertisers who are running display advertising to think about where you're taking your customer. You're making this great investment, you want them to take action, and when they go to wherever you're taking them, if they can't take action because you've got some huge flash thing that isn't, appearing on where you've taken them from the iPad, it's a very poor investment that they're making. So we, have to look at that full funnel.
If I could just say one more thing on the subject. One of the things that we've been really looking at is whether the first wave really of display advertising for the tablet is completely over. Right, if you think of that, of the first round of campaigns, there have been a lot of campaigns that look very similar, a lot of the big display, a lot of the same kinds of interactions, right? And what you're creating is completely different to the next level. And I think that what we're actually working on some new creatives that we're rolling out July 1st that are sort of part of a new backbone to our app to create bigger, stronger integration, stronger interaction. And part of that is about understanding the environment and the original goal of the user, and I think you're mirroring the same thing, is that some of the strongest campaigns we've had on our website have all the interaction happening within something that overlays the news or has a part in the page itself. And we're going to be bring the same thing into the app, is how do you respect the reader? Their goal was to come and actually get news, not to look at an ad. And we think that could be part of the second wave, is how are we integrated better?
Yeah, and I guess I'll add one more point. If you're a brand buying media, you'll hear tablet. There is a lot of inventory on tablet because there's desktop sites. There's an infinite amount of supply and it's growing. There is very, very little tablet inventory, meaning this ad that you're going to execute, could you really have done it to a high impact before the tablet? If the answer is no, then that's probably not the right ad to do. If the answer is yes, then go and do that ad. And I think what Seth just talked about, the Times is doing that. The simple little nuance they have, even a 300 by 600, which is standard, it's made for the tablet where the text on their app actually flows under the ad very nicely. You won't see many take that approach. So think about how does it integrate nicely with the content and the tablet.
Yeah, it seems like it's really important that you're aligning what the consumer is looking for on the tablet. It's not the same as digital where we have banner advertising. It's really about being part of that immersive experience when people are in that discovery mode and creating something that's providing them value. So is there anything else that you'd want to add before we open it up to questions? Anybody?
Oh, I mean, I'll just add, and this is just kind of a interesting thing from our industry. Our customers are not very media savvy. And forgive me if there's any people in the HR world here, but it's just not their job, right? And so our big struggle, our customers are trying to educate them when it comes to mobile, and this would be smartphone and tablet, on the user experience when you click on a job posting on Career Builder and you're taken to an application process. It was painful enough on the desktop, let alone a smartphone or a tablet. And so, our world is hopefully going to be, quickly changing because there's huge drop-offs, right? When I want to take action and 90% of the people are dropping off because you're asking me to fill out an application form that's going to take me 45 minutes, and that's on the desktop. On a tablet or a smartphone, it's probably 99% drop-off. And so it's, and again, we might be unique, but I think there's anyone else that has advertising that is driving someplace else where you don't really control that experience. you have to hope that that experience is optimized. And so the problem for us is not only is that a reflection on us and our brand, but it's a poor investment made by the customer, and somehow that's our fault, and we lose out on those dollars in the future, right? So it's really our job to kind of bring our clients at least up to speed on what the user experience is.
Great, so let's open it up to questions. Is anyone here? Go.
James Lee, I work for investment firm COSA. I have a question for gentlemen working for New York Times here. Number one, what do you think about third-party distribution platform like Flipboard or Current that allow you, number one, to get additional distribution or audience, and number two, potentially these apps are extremely socially connected, may get you additional personalized information about your readers. And secondly, from the advertising side, my question is, as consumer going to cross-platform, multiple screens, cookies are extremely difficult to track in a mobile setting. How do you resolve that? Does it make sense to outsource your ad delivery to the guys that are making the identity plumbing, like Google and Facebook, to help you to do more efficient ad delivery, optimizing it from the direct sales perspective? Thanks.
Thank you for asking one simple question. Just to answer your second question first, you'd be amazed how much of our ad serving we do. Actually, we have an in-house built ad server. Yes, we have partnerships with some outside firms, but much of our work is really done in-house. And the reason for that is because the New York Times has to rely on the New York Times. We even generate some of our own electricity in our building. The news has to get out no matter what happens, no matter what our partnership is. We have many excellent partners, and we're proud of those partnerships, but at the same time, we're going to rely on ourselves to make sure that the news and the marketing that's connected to that funds it, gets out there. In-person journalism is an expensive thing, and it's rarer and rarer out there, and so we're going to make sure that we deliver correctly on it, and so we're grateful for the people who support that. Your first question, which was something that I'm really excited about, that we refer to internally a bit as NYT everywhere, right? Which is to say exactly what we were speaking about before, that the most important thing is that the New York Times reader, who is, by the way, in many cases now, a paying customer online, right? Because we have a paid subscription system in terms of our digital access. Our news should be wherever that person wants to engage with our news. And that's really important. And so Flipboard's been a great success, and we're proud of that partnership. You can see Flipboard New York Times headlines right now. You can log in as a subscriber, and you can also see, I know they've launched some of the new mini magazines, and we have some of those as well.
So one thing I'll add on the second part of data, the biggest thing a lot of people forget is on iOS and the browser, third-party cookies are disabled by default, right? So that means tracking just doesn't exist, right? So kind of the way we think about it is you've got companies like a Drawbridge or a Tapad, they're very important in the space. What we're doing is, since we're a common platform, it might be your own domain like touch.vibe.com, we're uniting all that together, and we think data is important. We need to find a way to get around the cookie and target people, and that's not an easy problem to solve.
Since most people who have tablets have it as probably the third screen in their lives, of all the digital screens, what are any of you doing to work, or have you discovered ways that users can hand material off to themselves? I mean, one of the earliest phenomena of the mobile phone in the mid-2000s was that early publishers found that the most used feature was email. People were people weren't emailing stuff to one another; they were emailing it to themselves. And that basic functionality of wanting to move an experience from one screen to the other, still, after all these years, is still relatively difficult in most apps and most websites across screens. It seems to me that's an area of incredible fertile development, especially on the tablet, which is a kind of a middle screen where people either are going to want that material on their smartphone or they're going to want it back on their desktop to do something else on it, and very few companies seem to work at that. I'm sorry.
I'll take a go at this. So if you are browsing Shopkick and you're seeing all the stores nearby you and all the products nearby you, it looks like going like this. You're tapping on things you like, you're going like this to things you like, and you essentially, as you browse through our experience, can build a visual list. So it's not unlike pinning things to a pin board, but you're saving things to the visual list that will then send you notifications about when you arrive at a store where any one of those products are sold. So it was fairly difficult from a dev standpoint. It was probably the most significant thing we did in building the tablet app, but we can recognize a user as a single sign-on across multiple devices so that you can now build and browse and create your visual list and your needs and wants and share that with your friends when you're in your lean back out home, what we call couch mode, but then that actually follows you through and you have a consistent experience and we don't need to ask you to log out, log in, re-register or email anything to yourself. We want you to have it pretty seamless.
Yeah, one thing two things. One, on the user side, we built a feature called Favorites we released a year ago, which lets somebody log in with Facebook on, let's say, vibe.com on their iPad, okay, save that favorite, and then once they're on their phone, 2 days later they can see their favorite things across all their Onswipe sites. We know people have multiple devices and multiple screens. For them, how do we connect it? For the brands and the publisher, listen, we're only powering iPad and iPhone, which is a percentage of traffic, but our JavaScript is on every page, so we're getting data for more than 250 million people every month. How do you tie that data together for cross-device profiles and personalization? I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do there.
And if I can just dispute one part of your question where you talked about the tablet being a third screen. If you look back to election night, this past election cycle, we actually saw that people sat down, right? I mean, I look forward to election night like it's one of the great sporting events. So I get in front of the biggest screen TV that I can find, and I get the Chinese food, and I've got the tablet and the computer and the phone there, and I want all of that information. And yet what we found is that between 8 to 10 p.m., the peak hours when the election results were coming in, smartphone and tablet traffic outperformed NewYorkTimes.com web traffic. And so I think this notion of the third screen or the fourth screen, there's something about that intimacy that people feel as though the information they're getting there is more valid or more quickly delivered, even though it's not, right? The information is posted simultaneously on both, but people preferred to get their news during that really critical moment through a mobile device or a tablet device. And I think that puts on all of us who care about this industry a different set of demands, which is to say it's not about thinking of where we fall within that. There is a connection there that is so powerful that we all underestimate, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it might be a third screen at work or in the train or the bus, but at home on my couch, it's the first screen, right? So it depends on when that's that third screen. We see, I mean, it's double the traffic of smartphone and desktop in the evenings. You mentioned email. I mean, it was out of context, but we look at email, mobile email. We rely a lot on email to drive traffic back to our site. We send a lot of relevant email out to job seekers when there's a new job that fits your criteria. We let you know right away. And we've worked very hard on optimizing our email. It's now accounting for 65 to 70% of our overall email opens are now on mobile. And so we definitely have optimized for smartphone. That's critical. But we are even tweaking around the edges for tablet because it is still a unique experience, I think.
Heather, panel, thank you very much.
Thank you.